If Jack Ji-hoon wanted something, he got it, every single time. The Korean billionaire had spent 32 years proving there wasn't a door his money couldn't open. He owned companies worth billions. Private jets waited for him on command. His signature could turn a struggling startup into tomorrow's headline or erase a competitor with a single acquisition. And women never stayed away. Actresses chased him. Models competed for his attention. Harrises dreamed of carrying his last name. Every gala, every charity event, every business summit, someone was always trying to catch his eye. Jack G loved it. Why shouldn't he? He was rich, powerful, ridiculously handsome. To him, admiration wasn't earned, it was expected. And if anyone ever resisted him, they simply hadn't seen enough money yet. Because in Jack Ji-hoon's world, everything and everyone could be one. Across the city, Aaliyah Ashford wasn't thinking about billionaires. She was thinking about the rent due on Friday. The cafe where she worked had just called. Someone had quit without notice. If she didn't get there in the next 15 minutes, she'd lose the extra shift she desperately needed. She grabbed her backpack, apologized as she squeezed through the crowded subway, and sprinted through the rain toward the cafe. At that exact moment, a convoy of black luxury SUVs rolled to a stop outside the same building. Bodyguards stepped out first, umbrellas opened. Jack Ji-hoon stepped out of the back seat without breaking stride. He was already reading a report on his phone. He expected the world to move around him. It always did. Today, someone didn't. Thud. His shoulder slammed into a young woman rushing through the cafe entrance. Her coffee exploded across the marble floor. Her bag crashed beside her. Papers scattered in every direction. The entire cafe fell silent. One of Jack Ji-hoon's bodyguards immediately stepped forward. "We're sorry," he said professionally. "We'll pay for everything." Without even bothering to look at her, Jack Ji-hoon reached into his wallet, pulled out a black card, and casually dropped it onto the counter. "Buy yourself another coffee." He glanced at her bag. "Actually, buy yourself a new bag too." Then he turned his back on her. To him, the problem was already solved. Behind him, Aaliyah slowly looked down at the black card, then back at the billionaire who hadn't even asked if she was okay. She picked up the card, walked after him, and tapped him lightly on the shoulder. The bodyguards instantly stepped forward. Jack Ji-hoon turned around with the confident smile that had won over investors, celebrities, and almost every woman he had ever met. Instead, he found a pair of calm brown eyes looking straight through him. Aaliyah held out the card. "You dropped this," he frowned. "It's yours." "No." She gently pressed it into his hand. "You think money fixes everything, don't you?" For the first time in years, someone wasn't thanking him. She wasn't impressed. She wasn't flirting. She wasn't even interested in finding out his name. She simply adjusted her backpack, stepped around him, and walked out into the rain. The cafe remained silent. No one moved. Even Jack Ji-hoon's bodyguards exchanged confused glances. They had seen women chase him across hotel lobbies, wait outside business conferences, cry when he noticed someone else, but they had never ever seen someone hand his black card back. Jack Ji-hoon looked down at the card resting in his palm, then toward the cafe doors. She was already gone. For the first time in his life, someone had walked away from Jack Ji-hoon. And as the rain swallowed her silhouette, he couldn't decide whether he was furious or fascinated. The next morning, Jack G sat at the head of a $40 million boardroom surrounded by some of the most powerful executives in South Korea. A massive screen displayed charts, projected profits, and acquisition reports. Normally, every word spoken in this room belonged to him today. His mind wasn't there, and if we complete the acquisition before the end of the quarter, sir. The chief financial officer stopped talking. Every executive around the table turned toward him. Jack Ji-hoon slowly looked up. "What the acquisition? You haven't responded." He blinked once, approved. The room fell silent. The CFO hesitated. "Sir, you haven't looked at the numbers. I don't need to." His voice was calm. "If I wanted numbers, I'd have become an accountant." Nervous laughter echoed around the room. The meeting continued, but Ji-hoon heard almost none of it. Instead, one sentence kept replaying inside his head. "You think money fixes everything, don't you?" His jaw tightened. Ridiculous. Who did she think she was? He had solved the problem. Her coffee was ruined. Her bag was damaged. He offered to replace both. What more was she expecting? An apology? The thought irritated him. People should have been thanking him, not lecturing him. By the time the meeting ended, he was even more annoyed than before. His assistant, Choi Min-woo, followed him into the private elevator. For nearly 5 years, Min-woo had watched Ji-hoon negotiate billion-dollar mergers without breaking a sweat. Today, his boss looked distracted. "Sir," no answer. "Sir." Ji-hoon finally looked over. "What? You've been unusually quiet today. I've always been quiet, not this kind of quiet." Ji-hoon sighed. There was a woman yesterday. Min-woo's eyebrows shot up. "A woman? The one from the cafe? The one who returned your black card?" Ji-hoon frowned. "You heard about that?" The bodyguards have been talking about nothing else. Silence. Then Min-woo asked carefully, "So, are you going to let it go?" Ji-hoon looked out through the elevator's glass wall at the Seoul skyline. "No." Min-woo blinked. "No, I want to know who she is." The assistant stared. "You want me to investigate one woman?" Ji-hoon looked at him as though the question itself was offensive. "Did I stutter?" "No, sir." "Good." The elevator doors opened. "Find her." Meanwhile, across the city, life continued exactly as it always had for Aaliyah Ashford. She had already moved on from yesterday. She opened Morning Bloom Cafe before sunrise, ground fresh coffee beans, arranged pastries in the display case, smiled at regular customers, laughed with her co-workers. Unlike Ji-hoon world, nobody here cared about billion-dollar deals. People talked about football, the weather, their families, and whether the cinnamon rolls had just come out of the oven. Aaliyah preferred it that way. After her shift ended, she stopped by a neighborhood grocery store, bought fresh vegetables, dog food, and Bailey's favorite treats. The cashier smiled. "Bailey will be excited. He'll pretend he hasn't eaten all day." They both laughed. When Aaliyah reached her apartment building, Bailey was already waiting behind the front door. The moment she unlocked it, the golden retriever came charging toward her like a furry hurricane. "Oh!" she laughed, as Bailey nearly knocked her backward. "I missed you too." His tail wagged so hard his entire body shook. She knelt down. "Did you behave today?" Bailey barked once. "I'll take that as a no." After changing into comfortable clothes, she clipped on Bailey's leash. The pair headed downstairs for their evening walk. Nearly everyone in the neighborhood knew Bailey. Children waved. Shop owners greeted him by name. An elderly Korean grandmother sitting outside the apartment smiled warmly. "Aaliyah, good evening, Mrs. Kim." Mrs. Kim bent down to pet Bailey. "Such a handsome boy. He knows it." Bailey happily rolled onto his back. Mrs. Kim laughed just like some men. Aaliyah laughed too. "I'll make sure he doesn't become arrogant." Miles away. A thick file landed on Jack G's desk. Min-woo stood quietly across from him. "You found her already?" "Yes, sir." Ji-hoon opened the file. A photograph. The name Aaliyah Ashford, 26 years old, works at Morning Bloom Cafe, lives alone. One golden retriever named Bailey. No criminal record, no wealthy family, no connections to politicians, no connections to celebrities, no connection to him. He looked at the photograph again. "So this is the woman?" "Yes, sir." Ji-hoon closed the file. "I'll stop by tomorrow." Min-woo smiled slightly to apologize. Ji-hoon looked offended. "Of course not." "Then why?" He stood from his chair and adjusted the cuffs of his tailored suit, because no one walks away from Ji-hoon. The next afternoon, the bell above Morning Bloom Cafe chimed softly. Ji-hoon stepped inside wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than the cafe earned in an entire month. The room instantly noticed him. Customers whispered. Several recognized him immediately. Some reached for their phones. Employees glanced toward the entrance. Ji-hoon expected exactly one reaction: recognition, admiration, curiosity. Instead, behind the counter, Aaliyah looked up. Their eyes met. She recognized him immediately. For a brief second, neither of them spoke. Then she smiled politely. "Oh, it's you." Ji-hoon waited. Surely she had realized who he was. Surely yesterday's attitude had disappeared. Instead, she picked up her order pad. "Welcome back." She tilted her head slightly. "So, would you like to order a coffee today, or are you planning to solve another problem with your credit card?" The customer standing beside the pastry display nearly choked on his cappuccino. Even Min-woo lowered his head, a smile. Jack Ji-hoon stood frozen. For the first time in 32 years, someone remembered exactly who he was and still refused to be impressed. For the rest of the afternoon, Jack Ji couldn't believe what had just happened. Not because Aaliyah remembered him, because she remembered him and still treated him like everyone else. The drive back to Jack Global was unusually quiet. Normally, Ji-hoon spent every ride signing documents, approving investments, or taking calls from world leaders and CEOs. Today, he simply stared out the window. "Or are you planning to solve another problem with your credit card?" The sentence refused to leave his mind. Back at headquarters, his assistant followed him into the office. So Ji-hoon loosened his tie. "So what? You were right. I usually am." She remembered you. Ji-hoon stopped walking. Unfortunately, Min-woo smiled. "I've never met anyone who speaks to you like that." "Neither have I." Silence. "Then you may leave." Min-woo nodded. He reached the door, then paused. "Sir, what?" "I think she bruised your ego." Ji-hoon slowly looked up. "My ego doesn't bruise. It certainly visited a cafe yesterday." Before Ji-hoon could answer, Min-woo quietly disappeared. The following morning, everything returned to normal, or at least it looked that way. Board meetings, conference calls, investors, contracts. Jack Ji-hoon was once again the billionaire everyone expected him to be. Calm, confident, untouchable, but just before lunch. He glanced at his watch. "What time is it?" Min-woo looked confused. 12:45, sir." A few minutes later, Ji-hoon stood up. "I'm going out. No security? No meeting? No investor lunch?" "No." Min-woo frowned. "Where are we going?" Ji-hoon grabbed his suit jacket and then said, "For coffee." 5 minutes later, the black Rolls-Royce stopped outside Morning Bloom Cafe. Min-woo looked out the window. "Sir, what? There's a coffee machine in your office?" "I know it grinds imported beans. I know it costs more than this cafe. I know." Silence. Then Min-woo quietly muttered, "Interesting." The bell above the cafe door chimed. Aaliyah looked up. "Oh, the money guy." Several customers smiled. Ji-hoon frowned. "I'm Jack Ji. I know." She continued wiping the counter. "I still think the money guy suits you." He stared at her. She wasn't trying to be rude. She was simply unimpressed. "What can I get you?" "Coffee." She smiled. "I assumed that." He almost smiled back. "Almost. What kind? Whatever you recommend." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" "Yes." She handed him a black Americano. 5 minutes later, he took one sip. His expression changed immediately. Aaliyah looked over. "You don't like it?" "I do. You made the same face Bailey makes when I give him medicine." A customer laughed. Ji-hoon cleared his throat. "It's stronger than I expected. I can add milk." "No." "Sugar." "No, you don't have to impress anyone." "I wasn't." "Good, because you were failing." She walked away before he could answer. Over the next week, something strange began happening. Every afternoon, Jack Ji-hoon found himself back at Morning Bloom Cafe. Sometimes he ordered coffee, sometimes tea. Sometimes he didn't even finish his drink. He simply sat by the window watching. Not Aaliyah herself, but the way she treated people. She remembered every regular customer's name. She carried an elderly man's tray to his table without being asked. She gave a little girl another muffin after the first one slipped onto the floor. She laughed with delivery drivers. She comforted a customer having a difficult day. She treated everyone exactly the same, rich, poor, young, old. To Aaliyah, people were just people. One afternoon, Min-woo finally leaned closer. "Sir, what? I've been studying business for 20 years and I still can't figure out your investment strategy." Ji-hoon looked confused. "What investment?" "You've bought 12 cups of coffee." "You've finished 3? Silence. Then Min-woo smiled. "I don't think you're here for the coffee anymore." Ji-hoon looked back toward the counter. "No, I don't think I am either." That evening, as they prepared to leave, Ji-hoon glanced through the cafe window one last time. Aaliyah locked the front door. Moments later, a golden retriever came running toward her from the apartment building across the street. Bailey, she knelt immediately. The dog jumped into her arms, covering her apron with muddy paw prints. Instead of getting annoyed, she laughed. A real laugh, bright, carefree, the kind of laugh he had never heard inside the cafe. He watched as Bailey happily licked her face. She laughed even harder. Ji-hoon found himself smiling without realizing it. She has a dog. Minu nodded. Golden retriever. Ji-hoon kept watching for the first time. He wasn't thinking about her rejecting him. He wasn't thinking about his bruised pride. He wasn't even thinking about himself. He was wondering who Aaliyah Ashford really was. For the next few days, Morning Bloom Cafe gained a customer who always arrived at exactly 2 o'clock every afternoon. Jack Ji-hoon. The first day, the staff whispered. The second day, they smiled. By the 5th day, everyone knew his order before he reached the counter, except Aaliyah never treated him any differently. Good afternoon. She smiled politely. The usual. Ji-hoon looked at her. I will have my usual. You've ordered an Americano 5 days in a row. I still don't like it. I know. Then why do you keep making it? You keep ordering it? A customer sitting nearby chuckled. Ji-hoon sighed. You enjoy this a little? She handed him the cup. That'll be 5. Oh, 1. Every single visit ended the same way. No special treatment, no flirting, no admiration, just coffee. One afternoon, Ji-hoon watched as an elderly man struggled to carry his tray. Before anyone else noticed, Aaliyah hurried over. Mr. Han, I've got it. She carried his coffee to the table, adjusted his chair, asked how his wife was recovering. The old man's eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, dear, she smiled. I'll check on you in a little while. Ji-hoon quietly watched everything. No cameras, no audience, no expectation of recognition. She simply helped because she wanted to. Back at Jack Global, Min-woo placed another stack of documents on the desk. Sir H, the Tokyo investors are waiting. They can wait. Minu blinked. They flew in this morning. They'll still be here this afternoon. Silence. Then Minu slowly asked, Are we going to the cafe again? Ji-hoon looked offended. I'm going for coffee. The coffee you don't like? Yes. Min-woo nodded. Of course. That afternoon, Ji-hoon arrived as usual. Aaliyah looked up. The money guy. I'm beginning to regret telling you my name, she smiled. I know your name. I just like this one better. He almost laughed. Almost. As he reached for his coffee, a little girl accidentally bumped into the counter. Her muffin fell onto the floor. She stared at it. Her tiny lip began to tremble. Before the little girl could cry, Aaliyah quietly picked up another muffin, knelt down, and handed it to her. There, accidents happen. The little girl's face lit up. Really? Really? Her mother quickly reached for her purse. I'll pay for another one. Aaliyah shook her head. It's all right. Have a wonderful day. Mother and daughter left smiling. Ji-hoon stared after them. You didn't charge her? Aaliyah shrugged. It was only a muffin. You lost money. I gained a smile. She walked away before he could answer. For some reason, that sentence stayed with him. Later that evening, Min-woo found him standing in front of the windows of his penthouse. The city glittered beneath them. You've been unusually quiet lately. Ji-hoon didn't answer. Instead, he asked a question. Minu, yes, sir. What do women usually like? The assistant blinked. Excuse me, you heard me? Min-woo thought for a moment. Flowers, they always work. Ji-hoon nodded slowly. I thought so. A slow smile appeared across his face. Prepare the biggest bouquet you can find. Min-woo sighed quietly. I had a feeling this was coming. The next morning, Morning Bloom Cafe was unusually busy. Customers filled every table. The staff rushed from one order to another. Then the front doors opened. Every conversation stopped. A dozen delivery men entered carrying enormous bouquets of imported roses, red, white, pink, yellow, more flowers than anyone in the cafe had ever seen. Customers gasped. Someone whispered, They must be for a celebrity. The lead delivery man smiled. We have a delivery for Miss Aaliyah Ashford. Every head turned toward the counter. Aaliyah looked completely confused. For me? She signed the delivery receipt. The florist handed her a small envelope. Inside only 4 words, from the money guy. Aaliyah looked at the flowers, then at the note, then quietly smiled. Not the smile Jack Ji-hoon had imagined, a completely different one. She turned to her manager, Mrs. Lee. Yes? Would you mind helping me with that? Aaliyah picked up 1 bouquet. Let's take these to the children's hospital. Across the street, Jack Ji-hoon watched from inside his car. His confident smile slowly disappeared. Min-woo folded his arms. Sir, I think this may not have gone the way you expected. Jack Ji-hoon had spent his entire life believing there wasn't a problem money couldn't solve. 3 days later, he was beginning to question that belief. The bouquet of imported roses he'd confidently sent to Morning Bloom Cafe never made it into Aaliyah's apartment. Instead, every single flower had been delivered to the children's hospital across the street. He had watched it happen with his own eyes. For the first time, a gift hadn't been rejected, it had simply found a different owner. The next afternoon, the bell above the cafe door chimed. Aaliyah looked up and then said, The money guy. Jack Ji-hoon sighed. I really do have a name. I know, she smiled. I just haven't found a reason to use it. He couldn't even argue with that. She placed his Americano on the counter. You've stopped pretending to like it. I still don't. Then why do you keep ordering it? He looked at her for a second. I think I'm getting used to it. She smiled. That's usually how coffee works. Later that evening, back inside his penthouse, Ji-hoon stood beside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Min-woo, yes, sir. What if flowers aren't her thing? Min-woo looked up from his tablet. I did wonder how long it would take you to ask that. What do women like after flowers? The assistant thought for a moment. Handbags, expensive ones. Ji-hoon smiled. Perfect. The following afternoon, a luxury boutique employee walked into Morning Bloom Cafe carrying an elegant shopping bag. A delivery for Miss Aaliyah Ashford. The entire staff looked over. Aaliyah opened the bag. Inside sat one of the newest limited edition designer's handbags. Beautiful, elegant, worth more than her yearly rent. A small note rested inside. Thought this might suit you, the money guy. Her co-workers gasped. Mrs. Lee looked at the price tag. My goodness, Aaliyah quietly closed the box. The next morning, she walked into a luxury consignment store. By evening, the handbag was gone. The following day, Ji-hoon arrived at the cafe. His confidence had returned, so she handed him his coffee. So did you like it? She nodded. It was beautiful. A smile spread across his face. Thank you. He blinked. That's it. You kept it? She stirred another customer's latte. No, I sold it. The smile disappeared. You what? It sold surprisingly fast. He stared. You sold it? She nodded. I donated part of the money to the local animal shelter. She smiled. They're raising money for surgeries. His eyebrows slowly lifted and I finally replaced my old refrigerator. Silence. Complete silence. Aaliyah looked up. What? You aren't angry, are you? I bought you a handbag. I know, it helped a lot of people. Then she walked away to serve another customer. Ji-hoon stood there trying to understand what had just happened that evening. Min-woo couldn't stop smiling. I've never seen anyone turn luxury goods into charity before. Ji-hoon folded his arms. I don't understand her. No, you don't. 2 days later, another plan. This time, no gifts, just dinner. He reserved the finest restaurant in Seoul. The entire rooftop was closed to the public. Musicians were hired. The head chef designed a private tasting menu. At exactly 7 o'clock, Aaliyah arrived. She looked around. You booked all of this? Yes. Why? So we could talk. She sat down. I suppose we can do that. For the first time, their conversation wasn't awkward. She asked about his work. He asked about hers. She laughed once. He smiled twice. It was nice. Then halfway through the main course, Aaliyah checked the time. Oh, she stood. I have to go. Ji-hoon looked surprised. The dessert hasn't even arrived. I know, then why are you leaving? She picked up her bag because Bailey's been home alone longer than usual. He stared. The dog, she smiled. He'll pretend he's fine, but then he'll sulk for the rest of the evening. She laughed softly. I should go before he starts planning his revenge. She thanked him for dinner, paid for her own appetizer before he could stop her, and quietly walked away, leaving Jack Ji-hoon alone at a table prepared for 2. 10 untouched dishes slowly arrived, one after another. The chef approached carefully. Chairman Jack, should we continue serving the rest? Ji-hoon looked at the empty chair across from him, then sighed. No. A small smile crossed his face. I don't think she'd want the food wasted. On the drive home, neither man spoke for several minutes. Finally, Ji-hoon broke the silence. Min-woo, yes, sir. I've been doing this all wrong. His assistant glanced over. What do you mean? I keep trying to bring her into my world. He looked out at the passing city lights, but I don't know anything about hers. Min-woo smiled to himself. It had taken 4 weeks, a return card, a truckload of flowers, a designer handbag, and the most expensive dinner in Seoul. But for the first time, Jack Ji had stopped asking, what can I buy her, and started asking, who is she? For the first time in his adult life, Jack Ji-hoon stopped trying to impress someone. No flowers, no designer handbags, no 5-star restaurants, no expensive surprises, just coffee conversation. And somehow he enjoyed that far more than he expected. Every afternoon he found himself at Morning Bloom Cafe. Sometimes they talked for 5 minutes, sometimes 10. Sometimes Aaliyah was too busy serving customers to say more than your Americano. He didn't mind because he had stopped coming for the coffee. He came for her. One rainy Thursday evening, the cafe closed later than usual. Rain hammered against the windows. Customers hurried outside, beneath umbrellas. Aaliyah looked through the glass. Oh no! Jack Ji looked up from his cup. What? Bailey? He hates thunderstorms. She quickly untied her apron. I need to get home. She reached for the cafe door. A loud clap of thunder shook the street. The rain became even heavier. Without thinking, Ji-hoon picked up his car keys. I'll drive you. She immediately shook her head. No, it's all right. You'll be soaked. I've been soaked before. You'll catch a cold. I'll survive. He sighed for once. I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just offering you a ride. She looked at him for several seconds. Then, for the first time, she nodded. Okay. 20 minutes later, the black Rolls-Royce pulled into her quiet neighborhood. Luxury cars had never entered this street before. Children playing beneath apartment balconies stopped to stare. Shop owners looked up from their stores. Mrs. Kim adjusted her glasses. Well, that's new. Ji-hoon Suk stepped out first, opened the umbrella, walked Aaliyah to the apartment entrance. You really don't have to come upstairs. I know, but you said Bailey gets nervous, she smiled. He does. She unlocked the apartment door. Before she could say another word, a golden blur came charging toward them. Bailey. The golden retriever launched himself straight at Aaliyah, then suddenly stopped. His ears perked up. He looked at Ji-hoon. His tail started wagging wildly. Oh! Aaliyah laughed. I think he remembers you. Bailey walked closer, sniffed Ji-hoon's polished shoes, then without warning, jumped. Both muddy paws landed squarely on Ji-hoon's expensive charcoal suit. Golden fur instantly covered the fabric. Another jump, another muddy paw print. Aaliyah gasped, Oh my goodness, Bailey, I'm so sorry. She rushed forward, but Ji-hoon gently stopped her. He looked down at his ruined suit. The silence lasted 3 long seconds. Then he slowly crouched, reached out, and scratched Bailey behind the ears. The dog immediately rolled onto his back, tail wagging so hard it thumped against the floor. Aaliyah blinked. You like dogs? Ji-hoon smiled. I grew up with one. Bailey happily licked his cheek. Aaliyah couldn't help it. She burst into laughter, not the polite laugh she gave customers, not the amused smile she'd given him before. A real laugh, the kind that made her shoulders shake. Ji-hoon looked up. What? She tried to answer, she really did, But every time she looked at his suit, covered in fur, covered in muddy paw prints, she started laughing all over again. Finally, she managed. "You?" She pointed at him. "You look ridiculous." Ji-hoon looked down. His 1,000 Italian shoes were muddy. His perfectly tailored suit looked hopeless. He shrugged. "I've had worse meetings." That only made her laugh harder. For the first time, he laughed too, not because he was trying to charm her, not because he wanted something, because he genuinely found the moment funny. A few minutes later, Aaliyah returned from the bedroom carrying a clean towel. "You can wipe your jacket." He accepted it. "Thank you." She hesitated. "Would you like some coffee?" He looked around the apartment for the first time. It was small, comfortable. Books filled a wooden shelf near the window. Potted plants sat neatly on the balcony. Bailey's toys were scattered across the living room. Nothing matched, nothing was expensive, yet somehow it felt warmer than his penthouse ever had. "I'd like that." She disappeared into the tiny kitchen. A few minutes later, she returned carrying 2 simple mugs. No imported beans. She smiled. "Just instant coffee." Ji-hoon took a sip. She watched his face carefully. Well, he looked at the mug, then back at her. "I think," he smiled, "I finally found coffee I actually like." She laughed softly. "I knew those Americanos were torture. They were." "Then why did you keep ordering them?" He looked at her for a moment, then answered honestly. "Because they came with a conversation." For the first time, Aaliyah didn't have a clever reply. Silence settled between them. Not awkward, comfortable. Bailey wandered over and rested his head on Ji-hoon's knee. Without thinking, Ji-hoon scratched behind his ears. Bailey closed his eyes happily. Aaliyah smiled. "I think he likes you." Ji-hoon looked down at the dog, then back at her. "I hope," he smiled softly. "His owner will someday too." She felt her cheeks warm. Instead of answering, she looked away. Later that night, Ji-hoon stood outside her apartment. Mrs. Kim happened to be watering her plants. She smiled knowingly. "So you're finally visiting properly?" Ji-hoon looked confused. Mrs. Kim winked. "Don't keep that sweet girl waiting too long." Before he could answer, she disappeared inside, laughing. Ji-hoon shook his head. As he walked toward his car, he looked back one last time. Up on the second floor, Aaliyah stood behind her window, watching him leave. This time, she didn't look away. Weeks passed. Something had changed, not just in Jack Ji-hoon, in everyone around him. The executives at Jack Global noticed their chairman smiled more often. His employees no longer trembled every time he walked into a room. Even Min-woo noticed. One afternoon, he watched in complete disbelief as Jack Ji-hoon declined an invitation to a private dinner with international investors. "Sir, the chairman of Orion Group flew here from Tokyo. I know he specifically requested dinner. I know. Are you saying no?" Ji-hoon smiled. "I already have plans." Minu checked the schedule. "There isn't anything on your calendar." "There is now," Ji-hoon said. An hour later, Ji-hoon stood outside Aaliyah's apartment, holding nothing. No flowers, no expensive bags, no jewelry. Mrs. Kim spotted him immediately. "Oh, the handsome boyfriend is here." Ji-hoon laughed. "I'm not her boyfriend." Mrs. Kim smiled knowingly. "Not yet." Bailey heard him before anyone else. The golden retriever sprinted toward the door, tail wagging wildly, the moment Aaliyah opened it. Bailey squeezed past her and tackled Ji-hoon with excitement. She laughed. "I think he's happier to see you than me. I wouldn't go that far." Bailey barked, as if disagreeing. That evening, the 3 of them walked through the neighborhood Jack. No bodyguards, no luxury cars, just 2 people and 1 very energetic golden retriever. Bailey suddenly chased a squirrel. The leash slipped from Aaliyah's hand. Oh no! Before she could react, Ji-hoon took off running. Still wearing an expensive suit, he chased Bailey across the grass, past laughing children, past surprised joggers, until finally he caught him completely out of breath. Grass stains covered his trousers. His hair was a mess. Aaliyah laughed so hard she had tears in her eyes. "You look ridiculous," he smiled. "I know. And somehow I don't care." As the sun began to set, They sat together on a quiet jack bench. Bailey lay asleep between them. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ji-hoon's suck broke the silence. "I owe you an apology." She looked at him. "When we first met, I thought money solved everything." He smiled to himself. "I actually believed I could buy my way into your life." She stayed quiet. "I was arrogant. I was selfish, and I never once stopped to ask what mattered to you." He looked down at his hands. "Thank you for not accepting the flowers." She smiled. "For selling the handbag." She laughed softly. "For leaving the dinner," she nodded. "And for giving me the chance to become someone I actually like." Silence. A gentle breeze passed between them. Then Aaliyah finally spoke. "I've been afraid." He turned toward her. "Afraid?" She nodded. "One day you'll wake up, you'll remember who you are, and you'll realize I'm just a woman who makes coffee." Ji couldn't help smiling. "You still don't understand." She frowned. "Understand what?" He reached into his jacket pocket. She froze. He wasn't pulling out his black card. Instead, he carefully removed a small leather bookmark. Plain, simple, handmade. The stitching wasn't perfect, neither were the edges. Inside, 6 words had been carefully engraved. "No money, just me, Ji-hoon." He handed it to her. "I made it." She looked at him in disbelief. "You made this?" He nodded. "It took me 3 attempts. The first 2 looked terrible." She laughed through tears. "This is the first gift you've ever given me." "No, it's the first gift you've accepted." She looked down at the bookmark, then quietly whispered, "Do you know why?" He shook his head. "Because this couldn't be bought." Tears filled her eyes. "So yes, I think I'm finally ready to call you by your real name." He smiled. "No more money guy." She laughed. "No more money guy." She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwined naturally. No audience, no photographers, no headlines, just them. Bailey opened one eye, barked once as if giving his approval. The following morning, Morning Bloom Cafe buzzed with customers. Jack Ji-hoon walked inside. The same cafe, the same doorway, the same counter where everything had begun. Aaliyah smiled. "The usual." He nodded. "The usual." She placed 2 coffees on the counter. He instinctively reached into his jacket. His fingers brushed against his wallet. He paused, smiled, then slowly put it away. Aaliyah noticed. "So you've finally learned." He looked at her. "I'm still learning." She reached across the counter, took his hand. Outside, life and soul carried on as it always had. But inside Morning Bloom Cafe, the Korean billionaire who once believed every problem had a price had discovered the one thing money could never buy. And somehow that made him richer than he'd ever been.